My childhood had a lot of ups and downs, just anger and hurt and just not knowing where I belonged or where I fit in, especially when my siblings were born. They were born from my dad and my stepmom, who raised me since I was 3. When I was 13, it was end of 7th grade. I had a friend and she was a foster child. I befriended her and I think she always thought my life was so perfect. And one time she took me to a side of town that I knew I shouldn't have been in and basically set me up to be snatched in the house and gang raped by my peers. I remember being snatched up the stairs and I could hear my friend laughing on the porch, which just like pierced my heart. I went away for summer camp and I wrote in my diary that, I had, sex with, and I just wrote the names of the boys just to have a remembrance of it, because I just couldn't write the word rape. I couldn't say it. I couldn't think that that's what happened to me. And so that time when my parents found my diary, my dad read it and he thought that, I was promiscuous and that called me a tramp. I'll never forget that because it just stung, to have your own dad say that to you about you. And so at that point, I just felt like my purity was stolen from me, and being raised Catholic, I just felt like I let God down. And so I just became what they said I was, and I just gave up. Went to an all-girl Catholic college at Notre Dame, met my children's father there. He was verbally abusive, physically abusive, mentally abusive. I lived in a constant state of fear, but also guilt. And I think that's why I stayed together with him for 10 years. I had a lot of guilt, and I thought that he being in my life was my punishment. One point when I was, very depressed, I decided that night that I can't do this anymore. And so I took the aspirin and drank the wine, and I remember getting on my knees saying, God, if you really exist and you really care and you really, have a plan for me, then show me that you're real. When I woke up the next morning, part of me was scared. But then when I saw my daughters and they were looking at me, with their little eyes, and I just remember them looking at me, Mommy, are you okay? And I thought, how could I have ever done this? How could I leave them? It was the most selfish thing I thought that I've ever done. And, I just knew at that point, God spared my life, and that I needed to do whatever it took to make sure that these girls didn't have the same path I had. I ended up leaving and moving back into my mom's house with her husband. And her husband was with a group of friends he worked with, and they started talking about a church, Calvary Chapel. And so we walk in and, the worship time, and I just remember just crying and not knowing how to stop it. And it wasn't one of those painful cries. It was just like a cleansing cry. Like everything that I walked through, it was just like cleansing me. After the study, my mom and I, in the midst of all our problems, walked forward together as mother and daughter to receive Christ. Basically started going to single-parent Bible studies and meeting new people. And Pastor Ruben, who announced that they were just given a house, it was a single-parent discipleship house. So I was the first resident in the discipleship house. The girls were going to Big Sisters and getting involved, and they were still connected with their dad, by phone. And I remember getting a call one day, and he said, I just want to tell you I'm sorry for everything I ever put you through. And he had gotten saved. Even though we're not in the same state, even though he's remarried, I was ready to receive what he said, and I was ready to extend the same grace and forgiveness that was extended to me. Recently, ended up doing the Financial Peace University Bible study, and I started just little by little applying the principles. And last year, I was able to buy my first home. Right now I feel like God has really redeemed a lot of areas of my life, having been sexually abused multiple times. I went through a program of Bible study that was kind of a support group. Going through that healing process has really deepened my relationship with the Lord and has allowed me for the first time to trust people in my life. I just realized God puts the lonely in family, and He gave me a family down here at Calvary Chapel.